Okay, so here's my formula. I always like to put what I'm using for x1, y1, x2, y2 right below it. So I did the change in y on top. I did 5 minus the negative 9. I did the change in x on bottom, 2 minus 0. So I got 14 divided by 2, which is 7. If it doesn't divide, I just keep it a fraction. So a positive over a positive is positive. If it were a negative over a negative, I would also make it positive. If you did it the reverse and used the other point first, you would have negative 14 divided by negative 2 and still get the same answer. So now we're going into writing the equations of lines. So as I said, this is all a review. You guys should remember slope-intercept version of a line, y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope of the line and b is the y-intercept, where the point where the line crosses the y-axis. So write the equation in slope-intercept form. If the slope is -4, so it's giving you the m is -4, and the y-intercept is 5, so the y-intercept is 5. So all you have to do is take your y equals mx plus b, replace the m and the b with what was given, so it's y equals -4x plus 5. The next one gave us the picture instead. So it's easier to get the y-intercept. I'll first look right there that the y-intercept, or the b, is equal to 3. Then the slope we're going to have to find using rise over run. So how many points do I need? 2. So I'm going to use the point that I already used for y-intercept. I see this one other point as well. I always like starting with the leftmost point, which is the one that was boxed in. And the rise is going to be going 2 down. There's my rise. My run is going to the right 3, positive 3. So the slope is -2 over 3. So the equation of the line, y equals mx plus b, I'm going to pop in the -2/3 for the m, then put the x, and then, I don't know why this wasn't equals, I'm sorry, plus 3 for the y-intercept. If it was a negative y-intercept, I would put a minus sign in front instead. Okay, so that's when you're given the picture or just flat out given the slope and the y-intercept. However, if they give us the slope and a point that's not the y-intercept, there are a few different ways to do it. First, if you have access to a graph, the first way is the easiest. Just graph it. Graph the one point that's given to you. Use the slope to find the y-intercept, and then you'd have your slope and your y-intercept. Now, if your y-intercept is in an integer, that's not going to be favorable. Method 2 is using y equals mx plus b, substitute the slope in for m, and xy coordinates in for the x and the y, and solve the equation for b, the y-intercept. So I'm going to show it to you that way. And number 3, using point slope form, which you would have to memorize if you wanted to use this, y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. You're going to see all this again in Algebra 2, so it is important that we remind you of what this is. So plug a point in for the line for x1 and y1, and then you need the slope for m. If they want it in y equals mx plus b form, you could then get it in y equals mx plus b form. So because I don't have a graph, I'm going to be doing the next example using options 2 and 3. So let's do option 2. And I'm referring to this option 2 up here. Using the equation y equals mx plus b, substitute what they give you for the slope for m. So they give you that the slope is 2. I'm getting that right out of the question. And then they give you the 0.46. So that tells you that we know that x is 4, y is 6 as a solution to the equation using the coordinates from the line. So now using y equals mx plus b, I could plug in for every number except the one that we don't know, which is the y-intercept. So I could plug 6 in for the y, 2 in for the m, 4 in for the x, and leave the b as a variable. Simplify, multiply the 2 times 4, minus 8 on both sides. I get that negative 2 is equal to the b. So if negative 2 is equal to the b, I now have the slope that was given in the problem and the y-intercept that we just solved for. So using y equals mx plus b again, I leave the y and the x, just plug in the values of m, which was given, and b, which we found, minus 2. So you could decide if you prefer to use that method or method 3, which is using point slope form of the line. Point slope form is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So in this form, you need to replace the y1, the m, and the x1. And the y and the x stay in the problem. Again, the m is given, that's the 2. Here, we have our x and y of the 1 point given, so that's our x and y1. So I'm going to put in y minus the 6. If it was a negative 6, I'd be putting minus negative 6, so it would say y plus 6, equals the slope 2 times x minus x1, which is 4. These two equations are equivalent equations written in different forms. This didn't specify which way to write the equation. So if it were multiple choice, you could match them in the calculator. You could right now see that if you put them both in the calculator, they would graph right on top of each other. Or what we did a lot in 8th grade is distribute the 2 and then add 6 on both sides and see that the equations are equivalent that way as well. Okay, the next one is similar, but it doesn't even give you the slope. So I'm going to use method 1, but if you prefer, method 2, it was the first one I did above. If you prefer to use method 3, go ahead and just look back at that one. So for this one, it gives us 2 points. It doesn't give us the slope. So I have an extra step of first finding the slope. So we're going to find the slope. Then we're going to find the y-intercept. And when you were in 8th grade, I did this with you. And then I'm going to write the equation. So slope, we have x1, y1, x2, y2. So I could put y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So the y2, I wrote it as 5 minus the y1 is negative 1 over the x2 is 6 minus the x1 is negative 3. So I made it a little trickier putting the negatives as the x1, y1. So it ends up being plus signs, so double negative. So I get 6 over 9, which if I divide both by 3, which I do not have to, but I would see that the slope is simplified to 2/3. So now, when I do the next part, I need to solve for b like I had done above here. Okay, the red work in that method too. So if I have y equals mx plus b, I have to plug the 2/3 in for the m. We found that this is the m. And we need one pair of coordinates, x and y, to plug in for x and y to solve for b. Now, we have 2 points to choose from. You could use either one. Would you choose to work with -3, -1, or 6, 5? I always choose the positives when I have the option. So I'm going to use the 6 and the 5 for my x and my y. So I'm going to plug in 5 for y, 2/3 for the m, The x value is 6, and then plus b. Now I could simplify that. 5 equals the 2/3 times 6 is 4 plus b minus 4 on both sides, and I get that 1 is equal to b. So I have my slope and my y-intercept now. So y equals mx plus b. I'm going to put the 2/3 in for the m and the 1 in for the b. I don't like how I wrote my x like that. 2/3 with a bigger x plus 1. Okay, don't forget the y equals because it's an equation. Try number 8 and then move on to the next video.